Good morning. Today is Tuesday the 25th. Um, it is our second week of the mini challenge. For those of you interested, see the description below on YouTube. For family members interested, reach out to me, text me, call me, polo me, whichever you prefer. We've got marks here for our second week. And let's start with the daily reflection on the New Testament. The 25th. Okay. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, and I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Matthew chapter 25, verse 24 through 25. In the parable of the talents, Jesus admonishes us to enlarge upon our abilities and use our every talent in the Lord's service. Although perfection is pending, this life is the time to strive to become all that God wants us to be. Either we progress with faith and courage, or wither and die from fear and laziness. Elder James E. Talmage wrote, The honest, diligent, faithful servants saw and reverenced in their Lord the perfection of the good qualities which they possessed in measured degree. The lazy and unprofitable serf, afflicted by distorted vision, professed to see in the master his own base defects. In a particular sense, men are prone to conceive of the attributes of God as comprising in augmented degrees the dominant traits of their own nature, while we are called to fear God in the sense of demonstrating reverence and respect towards the Almighty. A morbid and unhealthy fear of God's wrath stifles growth and frustrates our spiritual development. That's an interesting point. That the things that are the most dominant in you, you see in God, or you try to have portrayed as God. It's like when you really just don't like somebody and you just get so annoyed by them, and mainly what that most annoying feature of that person is the one that you notice in yourself and you don't like in yourself. Like people who say, oh my gosh, you're so judgmental, are usually the ones who judge everybody. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Today is Acts chapter 17, and in this chapter, Paul and Silas and somebody else are going around preaching, and the Jews of these places don't like it, and they start casting them out of places. They come and they stir up the people and they toss them out, so they go over to another place and they start preaching, and then when they hear that they're preaching in another town, they go over there and they stir the people up and they throw them out. But where this chapter kind of culminates is Paul goes over to Athens, and it says now while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was stirred in him when he saw the city wholly given to idolatry. So he goes to Athens, and then he calls Silas and Timothy, saying, you gotta get over here quick. I need you. He's vexed. He's upset. He's troubled because the whole city is just nothing but idol worshipment. And it says here that for all the Athenians and strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else, but either to tell or to hear some new thing. So it sounds like it's a town full of lazy and idolatrous people, where they do nothing but just sit around and tell stories or hear stories, or, you know, just seeking entertainment anywhere they can. Does it sound familiar? I don't know. Anyways, Paul starts to preach to them, and he says, "As I passed by, I beheld your devotions. I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him I declare unto you." So they don't even know who they're worshiping. They're just like, yeah, this is good enough. To the unknown God. And then he goes into how if they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. For as much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the Godhead is like unto gold or silver or stone, graven by art and man's devices. This I liked. The verse 28 is my favorite. It's the one I chose for the challenge, because it just, I liked 28 and 29 together, saying that if we are God's offspring, then why would you suppose that he is gold or silver or made of man's hands? I just liked it. I'm trying to come up with the words for how it made me feel, but it's one of those not gotcha moments, but like if we are the children of God, then how could he be made by man? How could he be molded by man's hand, by man's imagination, by man's devices? There, it came out. I got it. So that's the one I picked for my favorite today. We're going to read now from Teachings and Commentaries of the New Testament. Testify of truth, the Spirit is the key. When Paul stood courageously on Mars Hill and preached to the Greek philosophers. In the same spirit, we must be willing to open our mouths and testify of the truthfulness of the gospel. When Paul journeyed to Athens, he perceived the idolatry that formed the fiber of that culture and spoke to the local philosophers on Mars Hill concerning the inscription he had seen dedicated to the unknown God. Paul contrasted the vague superstition to the clarity and verity of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then it quotes verses 28 through 31. In response, the Athenians mocked Paul and for the most part rejected his gospel message. Some few, however, believed his witness and were touched by truths he taught. Clearly, it is imperative that we stand up for truth and deliver our witness in the strength of the Lord. Not all will respond, but the honest at heart will be moved by the Spirit to come forward and join the flock. And then it has a quote here by Brigham Young. Let everyone get a knowledge for himself that this work is true. We do not want you to say that it is true until you know that it is. And if you know it, that knowledge is as good to you as though the Lord came down and told you. Sometimes you read in the scriptures or church history these people who had remarkable visions of angels, and the Lord comes down and they get this very special witness, and you're like, why can't I have that? That would be so cool if he just came down and he solved all my problems and told me exactly what I needed to do. But if you have a testimony of the gospel, if you gain a knowledge that it is true, then it's just as good. Says Brigham Young. I mean, You can't take his word for it, who can you? All right, then we have a story here that Pinniger tells, and I'm going to read it. The Lord's Promise. I will never forget those two sisters. It was a dark, dark night in the heart of London, so dark that they were nervous. A man came up by them at a bus stop, a large, dark man, and they were nervous. And then they said they remembered what President Pinniger said. Don't fear, the Lord is before your face. He's on your right hand, he's on your left hand. His spirit is in your heart, his angels round about you. So these two sister missionaries spoke. Excuse me, sir, would you be so kind and friendly as to answer a few questions that might bring you happiness? He said, well, I'd be glad to, young ladies. And he did. He was from the Solomon Islands. He was in England for 4 weeks. He heard the message, and since the sisters cannot teach a man alone, they went to the church to find others. Later, this man, Peter, said, I want to meet your president. So I went with them on a discussion. Peter is an elect man of God, just like we learn in the Doctrine and Covenants, that the elect shall hear his voice and know that it is true. These two sisters taught him. We arranged for a baptism. Peter spoke at his own baptism. It was the greatest talk I have ever heard at a baptism. It was as though he were already a bishop and had been in the church all of his life. I thought, who is this man? They took him to church on Sunday, where he was interviewed and ordained to the office of a priest. He then left for the Solomon Islands, which was in one of the Australian missions at the time. I called the Australian mission president and informed him of the baptism of Peter, who lived in the Solomon Islands. He said, that's great, that's part of our mission. I think we have one member there on that island. We'll see what we can do. Time went by, and Elder Sonnenberg of the Quorum of the 70, who was the president of the Australian area, and Elder Faust, then a member of the 12, went on a visit to the Solomon Islands to see what they could do to start the branches there. Peter greeted them at the airport. I am Peter, and this is my son. I am a priest in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. How can I help you build up the church here? Where would Peter be if those two magnificent sisters had not opened their mouths? If we allow one person to walk by and not open our mouth, we deprive them at that time of the opportunity of exaltation. This isn't a business. This is a matter of spiritual life and death. I am grateful that those faithful sisters opened their mouths so that they could be the instruments in the hands of the Lord to bless that great brother. They were bold like Paul of old. They stood for truth and righteousness and relied upon the Lord. It's interesting. What I liked most about this story is where he says, this is not a business. Sometimes it doesn't feel like, we make it feel like, or it seems like, okay, here's my checklist of commandments that I have to do today. And did I do this one? Check, 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 But it's not a business. It's a matter of spiritual life and death, which sometimes I feel I lose sight of a lot. Like, oh, did I do my ministering? Check that off. Did I go to the temple? Check that off. Or, oh, I've got to be a good LDS girl, and I got to do this, and I got to do that. And it's not business. It's not business. I need to write that down somewhere. It's not business. All right. That's all for today. I will now leave you with a prayer from a diary of prayer. It is the 25th. And this one is from the Sun Dances. Thanks to thee, O God, that I have risen today to the rising of this life itself. May it be to thine own glory, O God of every gift, and to the glory of my soul likewise. O great God, aid thou my soul with the aiding of thine own mercy. Even as I clothe my body with wool, cover thou my soul with the shadow of thy wing. That's beautiful too. Help me to avoid every sin, and the source of every sin to forsake. And as the mists scatter on the crest of the hills, may each ill haze clear from my soul, O God. I like that. As I clothe my body with wool, cover thou my soul with the shadow of thy wing. Do I plead for his aid enough? I don't think I do. All right. That was Acts chapter 17, and tomorrow we do chapter 18. That's all for now. I love you all. Have a great day. I will talk to you in the comment section. Bye.